For some context, I'm a 21-year-old female, but this story takes place when I was around 10 or 11 years old. Back then, I had a mirror positioned directly in front of my bed. Everything was normal until I turned 10. One night, I woke up suddenly, feeling an overwhelming sense of unease. My room was dimly lit from my nightlight, casting long shadows across the floor. That's when I noticed it, a dark figure standing over my PC. At first, I thought it was my dad, but then I remembered he was out of town. My mom was asleep in the next room, and there was no way she could be standing so tall, almost 6 feet. The figure loomed in the darkness, its presence unnerving. A long coat draped over its frame, and atop its head sat an old-fashioned top hat. It didn't move, didn't speak. It just stood there, watching. Panic gripped me. My breath hitched, and I did the only thing I could think of. I reached for my remote and turned on the TV. The second the light from the screen illuminated the room, the shadow man was gone. I convinced myself it was just my imagination. But the next night, he was back. This time, he was standing in the doorway, half hidden, as if peering into my room. The next night, he was at the foot of my bed. Every night he moved, but I never saw him walk. He was just there. And every time I turned on my TV, he would vanish. This went on for 3 months. I was exhausted, terrified, and unsure of what to do. My mom didn't believe me, saying it was just a bad dream. But I knew what I saw. I could move, I could talk. I wasn't paralyzed. And yet I was helpless. One night the worst happened. My TV remote was missing. I searched frantically under my pillows, my blanket, the side of my bed, but it was nowhere to be found. And then I felt it. The air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. Slowly, I turned my head toward the mirror. He was there, standing inside the mirror. Not in my room this time, but within the reflection, as if trapped. His head tilted slightly as though studying me. My heart pounded in my chest, a silent scream caught in my throat. I bolted out of bed and ran straight to my mom's room. I was shaking, trying to explain, but she was groggy and frustrated. "It's just a nightmare," she mumbled, turning over. I refused to go back alone. That night I slept on the floor in her room, but the fear never left me. The next morning I begged her to help me move the mirror. She sighed but agreed, probably thinking it was just a phase. We dragged it to the garage, and from that night on, I never saw him again. But sometimes when I pass by mirrors in dimly lit rooms, I swear I feel something watching me. And I wonder, was he ever really gone? Or was he just waiting for me to look again? At around 9 p.m., Nora and her team started playing, and the ladies went wild and started dancing. They did not stop the music until 12 midnight. They asked the bride's mom for a short break, but she refused and told them to keep playing. She would pay them extra money if they continued playing music for an extra 2 hours. And they got started again. Ladies didn't get tired at all. The dancing got out of control, but the electricity goes completely off, and then they continued dancing in darkness. No complaints, no nothing. The team took a jump in pitch darkness. One of the artists fainted on stage. They immediately stopped playing, picked her up, and took her to the guest room. They tried to wake her up, and then she did and started crying from fear. They asked what happened, and she responded by saying one of the women that were dancing had legs that did not look like human legs. They looked like goat legs. Someone is claiming weird, strong noises playing in one of the rooms. They suddenly got terrified and slightly stopped playing. Someone immediately spoke by an unknown voice. They all tried to wake her up, but she did not and started cutting her face. She was possessed by someone or something. One of the women stopped dancing, but her feet did not. Her feet kept dancing like they broke loose. More uncontrollable than electric shocks. They continued playing the same music at the same rhythm. They knew that something bad would happen if they stopped for them. If they suddenly ran away, that's why they decided to continue playing music until the early morning, when the call of prayer, Fajr, started. These creatures, jinn, hate hearing it, and it burned them, and that is Fajr. Nora and her team continued to normally play their music. The women were still dancing. Everything was going as expected. Finally, when the call of prayer started, everything disappeared. Even the lights. Women, children, everything simply faded. Nora and her team ran away from that place. In their way, randomly, a random guy stopped them and asked them why they were shouting in the middle of the night. They said they were playing music for that big house, and an incident has happened. The man looked at them and said, "What house?" They pointed at the house again. The man looked at them and told them that this house had been abandoned and left empty for 30 years, and that no one was in that house anymore. They peeked at the house again, and there was no one. No people, no lights, no children. It was just an abandoned, empty house. They thought to themselves, what were they all dreaming? The same thing? It was all just imagination. They were jinns, ghosts. They were playing for jinns. This is in fact a true story that Nora itself narrated in an interview where she stated that she never played music for someone again. Some games should never be played. Some trends should never be followed. This is the story of a YouTuber who chased after the latest viral challenge and vanished without a trace. The game that took over the internet. It started as a TikTok challenge, a mysterious game called The Doorway Ritual. No one knew where it came from, but thousands of users started trying it. The rules were simple. Go to an abandoned place alone at 3:33 a.m. Find a door that looks out of place. Knock 3 times and say, "I am ready to enter." If the door opens, walk through. Most people who attempted it faked their videos. It was just another internet hoax, until someone did it for real. The YouTuber who went too far. Ethan Graves was a rising horror YouTuber from Los Angeles, California. He specialized in exploring urban legends, and when he heard about the Doorway Ritual, he knew it was the perfect opportunity to go viral. His last video was titled, "I played the viral horror game at 3:33 a.m., and it worked." The footage was never uploaded, but his live stream was. The live stream that shocked the internet. At 3:30 a.m., Ethan's live stream began. Thousands of viewers tuned in as he explored an abandoned motel on the outskirts of the city. Then at 3:33 a.m., he found it. A door in the middle of a burned-out hallway. It had no dust, no signs of decay, as if it didn't belong there. Laughing nervously, Ethan knocked 3 times. "I am ready to enter." The chat flooded with messages. "Bro, don't do this. It's fake, right? Why is the door moving?" The door creaked open. Inside was nothing but darkness. Ethan hesitated, then stepped forward. The second he crossed the threshold, the stream glitched. For exactly 33 seconds, the screen was nothing but static. Then the stream came back, but Ethan was gone. The aftermath. The live stream never ended. For hours, the camera kept rolling, showing an empty hallway. The chat was flooded with panic. "Where did he go? This isn't a joke anymore. Call the police." At 4:06 a.m., the stream cut to black. When authorities arrived at the location, there was no door, only a solid wall. Ethan Graves was never found. His channel remains active, but no new videos have been uploaded, except for one. The final video. A week after his disappearance, a new video appeared on Ethan's channel. It was 33 seconds long. A dark room, a heavy breath, a whisper. "I shouldn't have entered." Then the screen cut to Ethan's face. His eyes were pitch black, his mouth twisted into a silent scream. The video ended with a single message: "Your turn." Would you try it? The Doorway Ritual is still trending, and some claim they found the door. But here's the real question. If you saw that door, would you knock? I used to live in this old house from the ages of 7 to 10. This happened a while ago, but even now I can't shake the eerie memories. When my family, my mom and my twin sisters, who were 4 at the time, moved in, there was something unsettling about the place. There was always this strange sense of dread, the kind that makes you feel like you're being watched. But the creepiest part of the house, by far, was the small closet underneath the stairs leading down to the basement, right next to the room where my sisters and I slept. In the 4 years we lived there, none of us ever dared to go inside. At first, the incidents were minor. Lights turning on and off when we were sure we had switched them, doors slowly creaking open on their own. But then, things got worse, much worse. Most nights when I tried to sleep, I felt an intense sensation of being watched. It wasn't just paranoia, it was an overwhelming presence, like something or someone was standing over me in the pitch darkness. Some nights I couldn't even move, frozen in place by an invisible force. One night, when I was about 8, I couldn't sleep at all. I was terrified of my own room, so I snuck into my mom's bed hoping to feel safe. I lay awake until about 2 in the morning when suddenly I got that dreadful feeling again. Something was watching me. My body locked up. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. That's when my mom's old music box started playing on its own. The haunting melody echoed through the silent room, each note making my fear grow stronger. My heart pounded in my chest as I forced myself to move, to wake my mom. But the moment I reached out to shake her, the music stopped. Just like that. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. After that, things didn't get better. My sisters and I slowly stopped sleeping in our room altogether, choosing instead to crash on the upstairs couch. Eventually, my mom had to sell the house because we couldn't afford it anymore. But on our very last night there, my sister and I made a terrible mistake. We decided to finally open the closet under the stairs. We stood at the entrance, hesitant, our breath shaky. The air around us felt heavier, colder. Slowly, we stepped inside, moving toward the dark corner we had always avoided. Just as we were about to look behind it, the door suddenly slammed shut behind us with a force that shook the walls. We screamed. Panicked, we shoved each other, scrambling to get out. My hands fumbled at the door handle, yanking at it desperately. When we finally burst out of the closet, gasping for air, we ran straight to our mom. But when we told her what had happened, she didn't believe us. Years later, I found out something that sent a chill down my spine. The man who built that house had died in it, and he had never left. I'm not sure what this would fall under, but it definitely was the strangest experience I've had in years. I work a night shift for a warehouse, won't say which, since it's not important to the story, only that I was coming home around 3 a.m. Now I'm out in the country where my home is in the hills, and it's about half a mile from the main road. About halfway up, the nice smooth road turns to dirt. As my wheels hit the dirt, I felt eyes watching me almost immediately, which normally I wouldn't care, because it's normal to see wildlife watching me come up the road. Only as I got to my normal parking spot, I grabbed my pocket knife I keep in the glove box and stepped out. My eyes immediately turned to the direction of a dark patch of woods on the other side of the road. Something told me to look there, and I held my knife up calmly, saying, "I know you're there." As the words left my lips, the world went dead quiet, which is very strange as there is a waterfall maybe 500 to 600 feet away from me, and I can always hear it when I come home. But even it went silent. It stayed like this for a good 10 seconds before the sound returned, and I heard something running away from me. I just kept my knife to my side and walked like I normally would to the house, as I felt like running would have been a bad idea. As I got in, I saw the dogs that normally greeted me weren't anywhere in sight, and they were in the living room, both looking out the window in the same direction I felt the gaze something from. I didn't say anything to my fiancée as she was asleep, and she doesn't have a belief in the paranormal, as I do, coming from my Mapuche heritage, South American Indian tribe. I grew up on stories from my dad and had heard the Native American stories of Wendigo, skinwalkers, and other spirits creatures. But since that night, I've never felt that same presence. No idea what it could have been. I just know it wasn't deer like I'd normally see around my home. So my name is Max. I'm currently 15, and this story happened to me at the age of 11 or 12. I can't remember the age too clearly. My friends and I love to explore, and any chance we can explore, we go do it. Here are the characters in my story. Max, me. Bren, a close friend. Nick, a best friend that always explored with me. The vanishing girl, the antagonist of this story. I wasn't actually at my house this time of the story. I was at my best friend's house, aka Nick, and we were extremely excited to explore a creek near his place. We have explored this place multiple times, and every time we find something new. This was the third time something creepy happened at the creek. We have had a man chase us through the tunnel, and a cult that owned the creek that we had an encounter with. If you want me to tell you guys the stories, they are short, and he'll tell them later. Nick and I explore this place a lot with a few other friends, but only one could tag along for this trip. This friend's name was Bren, and he was a chill kid. Bren was the oldest in the group, being about 14 at the time, and was kind of like the leader, even though none of us listened to him. We tried to get more people to join us, but after other experiences at the creek, they were too creeped out to join us. We all got out gear, a few snacks and a pocket knife or two, and readied ourselves for the adventure awaiting us. The walk was about a quarter of a mile and was really easy for our energetic child minds, so we cleared that walk really easily. There is a pretty long path of woods to get down to the actual creek, and it's really awesome to walk it in the sunlight, as long as you don't hit any spiders. After about an hour, we approached the entrance of the creek. This creek is also a national park, so we could walk it without worry of trespassing. Like that stops us anyway. We entered the creek side where there was a staircase waiting for use to go down. We wandered down the staircase doing what every kid does and skipping a few steps. I end up falling because of the jumping, and we all have a good laugh. All of us reach the bottom and splash around in the cold creek water. It was amazing. I loved every second of the adventure. After about 20 minutes of splashing and just messing around, my best friend Nick tells us he knows a cool area. Of course, being kids, we all followed him, and Nick wasn't incorrect. It was a beautiful area. It had a bunch of crawdaddies and a pretty deep area that us short kids could swim in. We spent at least 2 hours enjoying the great area and hanging out having fun. Eventually, the sun dips below the horizon, and we had to go. Nick's mom doesn't let us stay out late. We adventured to the staircase somewhat, scurrying up the stairs, about 100 steps. The group got to the trail that takes us to the street. A bunch of stupid kids wander down the path till we reach the end. We leave and get to the street, and then I turn around to see a woman. This woman has never been seen before from anyone in the group. She has a knife in hand, and she is about middle ages with a nightgown on. She was about 200 yards away from us, and I was worried. I tell my friends and then turn around some. How like the cliche horror movie scenes she is gone. The group believes me, and we all run home. A bunch of little kids running from a ghost, or is it? So after we saw the girl at the creek, my friends and I ran home. A white van kept following us, and then the headlights would vanish when we turned back. It was some truly creepy shit. It took us forever to get home, because we kept taking back roads to try and hide from this ghost car. After everyone got home, we sat down and talked about the day. It was only Nick and I in the house, and Bren had to go to his own house. After a while, Nick and I go to sleep, but little did I know, Nick fell asleep with a story to tell. As we got up and wandered back outside to meet with Bren, we were surprised to see Bren was already at our front door. We asked him what happened, and he spoke. Something was outside my window and wouldn't stop knocking and scratching at it, trying to get in. We were all thoroughly freaked out, and we believe him. The belief faded after we looked at his window to see no visible markings. Although we didn't see any marks, I still believed him because of his utter fear you could see on his face. After about an hour, we all sit down to speak about what happened the night earlier. Nick and Bren both knew what I saw, but they didn't tell me till later. They spoke to me about how they saw a little girl that looked just like the one I described in the first part of the story get hit by a white van. It gets worse. After the girl gets hit, the entire scene vanished in front of their eyes. What, how? I asked. No one to this day believes what we saw, but I don't need people to. The group knows what we saw, and we are constantly searching for the girl to get our questions answered. Have you ever seen something you couldn't explain, only for others to dismiss it? I grew up in the Middle East, where ghosts aren't commonly discussed, but jinns, demons, are part of religious beliefs. I never believed in the paranormal, as it was discouraged. At 19, I went on a road trip with 12 high school friends with no set camping location. After a few hours of driving, we stopped at a market. A local vendor told me something odd. If his fruit didn't sell, he'd drive it down a certain road, and it would become fresh again. I laughed it off. Later, we passed a lively village where friendly locals urged us to stop. A man even stepped in front of our car, offering fresh pomegranates. Odd, since they don't grow naturally there. We didn't stop, wanting to set up camp before dark. Camping was uneventful until I woke at 4:10 a.m. The camp was silent, but I heard hushed, urgent voices from another group. They spoke in a foreign language, then suddenly drove away. At dawn, as we searched for a private spot, we saw a woman in traditional clothing watching us from a nearby mountain. My friend waved, but she didn't respond. Instead, she slowly stepped back and disappeared. That night, we drove home, taking a detour to check for another village near the mountain. There was none. As we re-entered the village from before, we were horrified. It was abandoned, crumbling, as if left to decay for decades. No people, no animals, only ruins. Yet we had seen it thriving the day before. Worse, somehow, we had reached our city in only 2 hours, when we should have been much farther away. Then my friend gasped. Behind our speeding car, the same woman from the mountain was chasing us. We fled, shaken, unable to explain what we had seen. When I got home, my mother told me to pray. Days later, as we emptied our cooler, we found something impossible. The ice, which should have melted long ago, was still in perfect cubes. I moved out of the country a few months later. I still search for answers, but none of us talk about that night. In my old house, a lot of weird things happened. One morning, I faked being sick to skip school. My mom worked from home, talking to clients who struggled to quit smoking. Her office was near my room, so it was just the two of us in the house. I woke up around 9 a.m. with the unsettling feeling of being watched. At first, I thought it was my mom checking on me, but then I heard her voice from her room, deep in conversation. I yanked the covers off my head. No one was there, but I knew without a doubt that someone had been. I don't usually mess with the paranormal, but this time, I felt oddly brave. I sat up, waiting for the feeling to pass. Just as I swung my legs over the bed, I heard it, breathing. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was the mattress shifting, or my foot scuffing the floor. But the sound didn't stop. It was slow, steady, deliberate. My mind tried to rationalize it. Maybe my mom, breathing loudly in the next room. But then I heard her speaking again, her voice clear over the quiet hum of her computer. The breathing didn't stop. Worse, it overlapped her words. It was close. For 5 minutes, I searched my room, trying to locate the source. Finally, I sat back down. The breathing got louder. My stomach twisted. It was coming from under my bed. I leaned forward, gripping the mattress. As I lifted it, the breathing slowed, like it knew I was listening, like it was trying to be quiet. But there was nothing there. No vents, no pipes, nothing that could explain the sound. And yet, the closer I got, the louder it became. I did the only thing I could think of. I left, went downstairs, watched Scooby-Doo like nothing happened. I never told anyone. I don't know why, but I never heard it again. I never thought I'd believe in any of that folklore bullshit, but after what happened to me last winter, I don't know what's real anymore. My name's Matt, I'm 24, and I live in Northern Ontario. I grew up here, been out in the woods my whole life, hunting, fishing, hiking, all that. I know what's out there, or at least I thought I did. It started in December. The days were getting shorter, nights longer, and the cold was settling in deep. I had a buddy, Dave, who was big into ice fishing, and he had this little shack way the hell out on a frozen lake, about an hour's drive from town. One weekend he invited me up, said we'd spend the night out there, drink some beers, shoot the shit, just the usual. I figured, why not? Packed my gear, loaded up my truck, and headed out. By the time I got there, it was already dark. The wind was howling through the trees and the sky was heavy with thick clouds. No stars, no moon, just blackness. Dave's shack was a tiny thing, barely enough room for the two of us and our gear, but it was warm enough. We got a fire going in the little stove, cracked some beers, and settled in for the night. Around midnight, Dave passed out, snoring like a damn chainsaw, but I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. At first, I thought it was just the wind. It had picked up, making that eerie whistling sound through the trees. But then I heard something else, a crunching noise like footsteps on the ice, slow, deliberate. I held my breath, straining to listen, but it stopped. Figured maybe it was a deer or something, so I let it go and eventually dozed off. Then sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up again. This time it was different. The air inside the shack was ice cold, my breath coming out in thick clouds. The fire in the stove had died down to nothing but embers. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It was the smell. A rancid, rotting stench, like meat left out too long. It was so strong I gagged. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, trying to shake the grogginess. That's when I heard it. A voice, whispering, right outside the shack. My stomach turned to ice. It wasn't Dave. It wasn't even human. It was this raspy, wheezing whisper, like someone struggling to breathe. And it was saying my name. Matt. Matt ... The way it dragged out each syllable made my skin crawl. I nudged Dave hard. Wake the fuck up, I hissed. He groaned, barely stirring. Dave, I'm serious, man. Then the whispering stopped. Silence. And then, bang! Something slammed against the side of the shack. Hard. The whole thing shook. Dave shot up, eyes wide. What the hell was that? I grabbed my flashlight and my hunting knife, motioning for him to stay quiet. Slowly, I unlatched the door and pushed it open just a crack. The wind hit me like a knife, but that wasn't what made me stop dead. It was standing right there, just beyond the edge of the light. It was tall, too tall, at least 8 feet, maybe more, and thin, skeletal like a starved animal. Its skin was stretched tight over its bones, a sickly gray, almost translucent, and its eyes, Jesus, those eyes, sunken deep into its skull, but glowing, like embers buried in ash. It had antlers, massive and jagged, like a twisted version of a deer's rack, but covered in something. Scraps of flesh, maybe fur. And its mouth, that was the worst part. It was grinning, stretched too wide, filled with jagged, broken teeth, and dripping with something dark. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I just stood there, frozen, as it stared at me. Then it spoke, and it used my voice. Matt, come outside. I slammed the door and threw the latch, backing away, my heart hammering. Dave was freaking out. What the fuck was that? I don't know, I whispered. But I did. I had heard the stories, the legends, the Wendigo. It started circling the shack, slow, deliberate. Every few seconds, it would stop and press against the walls, making the wood groan, and it kept whispering. Sometimes in my voice, sometimes in Dave's. Let me in. It's cold out here. We sat there, knives in hand, too terrified to move. Hours passed like that, the thing outside never leaving. Then just before dawn, the whispering stopped. The wind died. Silence. We waited, barely breathing. Then slowly I unlatched the door and peeked out. Nothing. But the snow outside was disturbed. Deep tracks circling the shack. Not normal tracks. Elongated, clawed, not human, not animal. Something else. We got the hell out of there as soon as the sun came up. Packed our shit, drove back to town, and never spoke about it again. But I know what I saw, and I know it saw me too. Because sometimes on the coldest nights, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can still hear it, whispering my name.